Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to Effing with the Ineffable. I am Zoe,
And I am Smokey P,
aka Will. And
aka Will.
today I'm doing this solo. My husband had to do some paperwork and stuff out of the house, which doesn't happen very often these days, but if my kids start really screaming in the background, I'm going to have to step away and come back and all that stuff. So we'll see. I can hear them screaming right now, so we'll see how long this lasts.
And are they screaming bloody murder?
Well, why don't you update them on your garden while I check out what's going on? Hold on.
Okay, I can talk about the garden. It got cold last night, but the garden's been popping up pretty well. Peas are coming up. Onions are looking good. Carrots I haven't seen much of yet. Spinach is looking pretty good. Because I haven't really had a hot room, I've had some trouble with some of my hotter seedlings staying wholesome. The cucumbers went badly. The zucchinis are looking pretty good though, for what that's worth. Got most of my potatoes in, and okay, that's now I'm getting bored of talking about the garden, so you must be getting bored of hearing about it. Anyway, we had a visit to Washington last week. We did a recording from there, and that was kind of fun. I got to see my little grandchildren. That was a good time.
And
Got a call yesterday from my parents. They said, "Oh, our computer is on the fritz. We don't know what to do with it. It wouldn't start." So we went and bought a new one.
Really?
But we couldn't get that one working well either. So we took the old one down to some computer clinic guy, and he held this power button for 10 seconds and it turned on.
Oh my gosh.
So and then we took it home and we couldn't get it to hook up to the internet. So we were checking all kinds of boxes about DNS servers, and it's like, don't check anything. What are you doing? It's usually just a plug and play. It's a Chromebook. You're supposed to plug it in and it works.
It's like the simple. It's supposed to be like the simplest computer to use.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't like you never have to download anything. It's just all like browsers and stuff.
They are pretty technologically illiterate.
I still have to call every time to help them log onto Zoom, even though we do it every week. I wonder if they're going to be able to do it this week then.
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
So Grandpa might have to go to get out of, put on some pants and go down to the library to get on the computer and do his puts and calls.
I wonder if their library is letting him do that right now. Ours is still not, but
I think they are down there. I think
they live in a pretty non-COVID fearing state. So at the moment.
Right. Yeah. Seems like COVID's probably over.
Yeah, I don't know.
The summer's here and the time is right for rioting in the streets.
Yeah,
everybody across the nation.
It's funny you say that because we, when was it? It was Tuesday, so like 3-4 days ago, whatever it was. We got a call from our like building manager or whatever who said that well, we live in like a giant building complex, and we
live in the projects. Let's call it what it is.
The management company who owns our complex also owns a bunch of other complexes, so they're like a huge company. Anyway, they called and said that somebody who came to fix our oven was tested positive for COVID, and so we were exposed to COVID and all this stuff, but we weren't really that worried about it because they have to wear like the N95 masks. He literally was in our apartment for probably 10-15 minutes max. We never even like were really near him. And also it was almost—
You didn't kiss him goodbye or anything.
No, and I think it was almost—
No.
On Monday it'll be 2 weeks ago that it happened. So obviously we haven't had any issues since then. So, but yeah, I mean, even my friends who are really COVID conscious, all of them now are like vaccinated. So, they're starting to like live their lives again and have less—
They're getting out and protesting.
They're getting out and living, like starting to actually have people over to their houses and that kind of stuff. So
I saw that Hong Kong just had a court hearing where they sentenced a couple of activists to several years in prison for having unauthorized protests. What would they do if there was looting afoot?
Yeah, exactly.
Holy moly. I don't even want to know what the Hong Kong guys would do. They'd be like, oh, these are zombies. It's a zombie apocalypse. We have to wipe them all out.
Yeah, it'd be public execution. All right, hold on. What?
Little girls. Anyway, so they're having fun there, Washington. And there's all this hullabaloo going on in Minnesota. There's another shooting. This one was, another conflict between a police officer and a black citizen, and it escalated, and there was problems. Then there was there's shooting of a young kid, 13-year-old, in Chicago.
This was all this week?
Yeah, so there's trouble afoot. Then there was another kind of murder-suicide thing that happened in Indianapolis last night. 8 people got shot. Boy, if you watch the news, you'd think that things were pretty terrible, but looking out my window, it's a beautiful day.
I feel the same way. I don't.
Maybe I ought to keep the news off.
I mean, like I do to the extent that we can help or effectuate change or vote in the right people or whatever. I guess it's important to be informed. But
can we vote in the right people?
Well, I mean, given the state
of the union.
I had a long talk yesterday with one of my friends who is we have a lot of the same values. We're both Catholic. We're both very, very pro-life. Like the pro-life issue is probably our biggest issue for both of us. Like we care about it a lot. However, she is extremely liberal, and I'm obviously conservative, libertarian, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of times she'll be, I don't know, critical of whatever. And yesterday we were talking about Medicaid, because it's interesting. I've been on Medicaid in the past, and my friend who just came to be a libertarian this year, she has been on Medicaid in the past. And so my other friend was like, wait a second, how can you guys be libertarian and be on Medicaid? And so I was like, well, first of all, it's there and I qualify for it. It's not like the money's going to go back to the taxpayers if I don't use it, right? So the fact that—
No, if the government has a surplus, they will definitely they will spend the money wisely, and they will redistribute any money that's left over.
Yeah.
Have you no faith?
So I said, like, first of all,
in princes,
the fact that I qualify for it. Sorry, this might be like a tangent that we don't want to go down, but I thought it was
no, that's fine. It's all tangential.
Yeah. So anyway, I said, like, I qualify for it. And also I said the fact that it exists, like, do I believe that it's theft? Of course. But I said, I also believe that the roads are theft. I also believe that, like, lots of things that I use on a daily basis, like, because,
And if Robin Hood considers you poor, who are you to refuse the largesse?
and I said too, like, if I was given the power right now, would I eliminate that program? Yes, I would, because I believe it's theft, and also I believe that, like, more importantly, and her thing is, like, she was, like, getting angry. She's like, who are you to say that, like, once you're done with it, you could just get rid of it? And I was like, it's not that once I'm done with it, I would get rid of the program. I said, if I could have the power right now to eliminate
Based on principle, you'd get rid of the
Yeah.
program.
And I said, like,
you're still gonna enjoy the benefit as long as you can.
well, yeah. And I said, well,
I cashed my stimulus check. I considered it a complete theft
sure.
from the future.
Yeah, of course.
That should be my grandchildren's money, but they're withdrawing it from the future. You know, they're gladly paying us today for what they might make in the future.
And if you didn't cash that, it's not like that money's going back to my kids. It's just out in the
They'll find another way to waste it.
So the other thing is, I said, first of all, I do think that right now we're low income, so we qualify for it. In the future, I hope to be a high enough income that we will be the ones paying for these services. So it's not like I'm taking something that I'm never going to pay back. Whether or not I do pay it back is against the point. The point is, do I think it's theft? Yes, but if I don't use it, it's still going to be out there, and I qualify for it. And
your participation in it is not going to change it one iota.
Exactly. My voting is the thing that is supposed to be able to change it, although it kind of seems like no matter who you vote for, that doesn't matter.
It's pretty much been solidified ever since FDR. We've been living in a pretty much welfare state with Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, things of that sort.
The other thing I said is, like, would I eliminate? Yes. Does that mean I want to eliminate help for poor people who need medical attention? No. I really do believe that if we eliminated it, there would be more incentive for private institutions to start things like that to help people.
And charitable organizations.
That's what I mean by, like, private institutions.
It used to be that most of the hospitals were run by one or another religious organization.
Yeah.
You know, there's Jewish hospitals and Catholic hospitals and Methodist hospitals and Baptist hospitals and St. Jude's children's thing. And there's those things still all exist. They've been somewhat supplanted by all these other things. And when government does the charitable work, it reduces the incentive for other people to do charitable work.
Yeah.
So it you know, we've talked about it before. When I do something charitable, it's dignified.
Mm-hmm.
When the government puts a gun to my head and says, give us some money, we want to use your money to do something charitable, there's no dignity in that. It's actually an offense. Like you said, it's theft. It's Robin Hood. You know, is Robin Hood is he a folk hero? Is he a criminal? Yeah.
Why not both? Yeah.
Yeah, he's both.
I think it's interesting too. Like, I don't know a ton about it, but, like, aside from even the, like, religious institutions that have hospitals and stuff, think about, like, the Ronald McDonald House for, like, kids with illnesses and stuff. Like, that's all a private institution, like a business, who uses either a part of their proceeds from what they're making, or even, like, encourages their patrons to donate, and they use that and they do really good with it. Like, they have homes.
They do. It's a good program.
I only know a little bit about it because I've listened to a podcast in the past where one of the people volunteered at like a summer camp that was associated with like the Ronald McDonald House thing, and it was all for like kids with cancer, the camp. And yeah, like it's
I
all
volunteered at one of those back in the late 80s, mid
really,
late 80s. Yeah, I went to a camp that was primarily for um, kids, siblings of kids who had cancer, because the siblings get really short shifted.
yeah,
When a kid gets cancer, the entire family focuses almost all of its effort on, let's get this kid better, let's get
yeah,
this kid better. The other kids kind of get pushed to the side and
yeah,
don't get much attention or time or consideration. And so there was a program where they had those kids actually be able to get out and have a week's vacation at
yeah.
a camp.
That's
That was
nice.
fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, today's topic is should we be adding more Supreme Court justices? Should we be adding more states to the Union? Should we be, tinkering with the basic uh, organization of how the government is run?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is maybe, depending on the intention.
Yeah.
I looked up, this is an article, I didn't send it to you. It's from the Harvard Law Review from January of 2020. It says,
Do you want me to find it?
Hack the Union, a proposal to admit new states for the purpose of amending the Constitution to ensure equal representation. So I'll just read this first paragraph. For most of the 21st century, the world's oldest surviving democracy has been led by a chief executive who received fewer votes than his opponent in an election for the position. So you can tell where this is going already. Oh, there it is. Yeah. The first of these executives started a war based on false pretenses. That's not really a legit spin on that, I don't think. He didn't know they were false pretenses based on bad information. And it certainly killed hundreds of thousands of civilians and is still going on to this day. But Joe Biden's talking about getting everybody out by September. Of course, Donald Trump had said, let's get everybody else out by March. So that just kicks it down the road a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's now America's longest war. Woohoo! Afghanistan, #1. Anyway, the second, a serial abuser of women, oh my, who hired as his campaign manager a lobbyist for violent dictatorships. I don't know what that's about. Authorized an immigration policy that forcibly separated migrant children from their families and indefinitely detained them in facilities described as concentration camps. Well, I'm pretty sure that policy was already in effect under at least the Obama administration, probably going back longer than that. It wasn't intended as concentration camps. I mean, that's a spin that is pretty negative. The kids were not able to be kept with adults in order to keep them safe. Anyway, the point of all this is that they're saying that these people were elected and did things that were not based on the majority will of the people. So they want to say, let's change how the majority will of the people happens. Recent events have highlighted that the Electoral College, when it contravenes the popular vote, is an obvious example of unfairness. Interesting. So they want things that are appropriate and fair. They want equality, right? That's what they say. They want equal representation. Equality and equity are two very different things, and that seems to be a argument that's going on, and a clash of values that's happening in our culture right now that is going to be very difficult to sort out, because there's people coming from the side of, we want equality under the law. We want equal treatment under the law. Everybody, regardless of race, color, creed, national origin, who knows, whatever, they need to all be treated the same. I agree. That's a good way to do it. There's other people who are arguing, hey, if there's no equity, then equality doesn't mean anything. If there's no equal outcome, now that's a completely different thing. So it's interesting that they have this criticism of the founding fathers saying that the Constitution has built-in inequality. That's true.
That's the point.
That's true. The Constitution does have built-in inequalities. We are not an actual pure democracy.
Yeah.
We do have built-in things to make equity between the states, so that more populous states are not able to vote and say, we the rest of the union say that Wyoming sucks and we want to take all their crap.
Yeah.
Let's have a vote. Okay, Wyoming votes no, 49 yes, vote passes. We're carving up Wyoming and taking all their crap. Who's next? Okay, Alaska.
Yeah.
That's, they say that democracy is like, true democracy is like two wolves and a sheep voting about what's for dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
The sheep is almost always outvoted and almost always becomes the dinner. So equity was built into that, not equality, equity. As far as equality, the House of Representatives is based on a population factor. As far as the Senate, that is meant to be a check against the mob mentality that could eventuate from a pure democratic population-based system.
It's truly a genius setup.
It really does. It's kind of a genius setup, but it pisses people off, because then they feel like, oh, hey, the majority of people voted for Hillary Clinton. Why isn't she the president? Well, because the majority of states voted for Donald Trump. So the way that gets apportioned, it's a different calculus.
Yeah. There's always it's so funny because right after, well, not right after, because we were still trying to figure out basically who won, but when it was kind of clear that Joe Biden had won, of course, CNN started coming out with articles like, here's why the Electoral College is a great thing, and we need to keep it and all this stuff.
Because it worked in our favor this time.
It's so funny because there were lots of people who showed screenshots of literally articles from CNN in 2016 versus 2020, and it's like, we need to eliminate the Electoral College. Here's why. Versus the Electoral College is so vital, and here's why. It's like, you literally just want whatever's helping you, But meanwhile, hopefully people who are being, intellectually consistent or thinking about the issue or just principled in general, say this system kind of sucks sometimes. Do I like the fact that Joe Biden is president? Not really. But did he win according to our system? I mean,
he won fair and square.
I don't think there's a lot of huge widespread evidence of fraud. I do think the whole I think the whole like mail-in voting thing was a little sketchy. I think that being the norm is like a bad thing. We shouldn't have that be the norm.
Yeah, that's going to need to be something that gets changed. Otherwise, people are going to lose their confidence in
Exactly.
the integrity of elections. And
And
when that happens,
mhm.
that's the fundamental basis of
Yeah.
democracy, is that that everybody gets a vote, and
Mhm.
every vote is counted. Might be counted in different ways in different states, but they all count. If
Yeah.
that's not going to be the case, there's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
um so, and then there's all this hullabaloo about Georgia instituting, well, you have to have a ID card in order to vote.
Yeah.
That's true in almost every other state of the nation.
Yeah.
And yet, because Georgia does that, all of a sudden it's like, woo, Jim Crow. This is more like Jim Eagle. This is like complete vulture, picking apart. Let's what? How? And
Which
then they move the All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver, where if you look it up, Denver's voting laws require ID.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's not like you're moving from a state that has like some sort of horrible bias against helping people vote to a state where everybody votes. If you got a pulse, you can vote as many times as you want. We'll
Yeah.
figure out who voted when later on, but let's make sure everybody gets to vote, even if it means everybody votes 6 times. That's not the case.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So it's interesting that the very the bias underlying this Harvard Law Review is clearly one of a more progressive stance. They're saying that it interferes with progressive. They were saying up above, I think, something about it interferes with progressive, or maybe that's down at the bottom. Interferes with progressive agendas. Which, yeah, okay, it does. Yeah, it interferes with everybody's agenda. It interferes with mob rule. It interferes
Mhm.
with the majority being able to assert its will over everybody else.
Yeah.
But they're basing their it's interesting because they're basing their argument against this as saying, well, this eliminates equality, that there's not equal and fair representation in the Electoral College and in the Senate because it's not proportionate to the
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, to a certain extent, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But these are the same people who would make the argument that equality doesn't matter if there's not equity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
you can't have it both ways. You can't have equality versus equity in policy, but choose the opposite. Either one takes precedence or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And the structuring of the government needs to be similar to the structuring of the policies. There needs to be a certain cohesiveness in how the structure of the government is set up and how that supports and drives the policy going forward, or not. Either we need to say, you know what, it was a mistake for the founding fathers to build in these checks and balances, and everything should be equal. Okay, well, let's make everything equal then. But if you want to have this equity thing, where there needs to be fair outcomes, not just fair participation, then you need to have something like what the founders put in. which is, I think, like you said, it's pretty genius. It's got a pure democratic aspect in the House, and it's got a equity balance in the Senate.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
two
it's the
things.
same thing with the House of with the Electoral College. I mean, the Electoral College is still pretty biased toward population. Uh, it's still pretty skewed toward the populations.
Yeah.
Uh, the states with the most populace have the most electoral votes.
Yeah.
That's not pure democracy, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I two things. First of all, did you ever see the John Adams miniseries?
I never did.
You okay? You and Mom watch so much TV, but you haven't watched like the best. That the miniseries is so good. You need to watch it. The reason I bring it up is because at the beginning,
Paul Giamatti.
yeah,
He's not blue in that one, is he?
no,
That's
he's
not the.
not. That is a good movie though. So there's a part in that miniseries where they talk about there's basically like a British, I think it was a British soldier. It's been a while since I watched it. I think there's a British soldier at the beginning who is tarred and feathered.
Oh my
And
gosh.
tarring and
That's-
feathering was extremely brutal. Like
That is brutal.
yeah, they basically like strip you naked. They pour like boiling hot tar on you and cover you in feathers.
Did it usually kill people?
I don't know like about the usual amount, but like when you watch it, it's like this is brutal. This is really brutal. So
I'm surprised they didn't die from their wounds. I mean,
Yeah.
being covered with hot tar is that's got to be wounding.
yeah,
Really.
you would think like, and the show does a good job of like portraying that, I think. But he was watching this and he was watching how this mob got together and decided like,
Right.
we're gonna take justice into our own hands. We're gonna
Right.
tar and feather this guy. We're gonna run him out on a rail. And he talks about how like we don't want mob rule in this country because mob rule, like, not just that.
Mobs are they tend to decline to the least common denominator.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, the most violent, most aggressive member of the mob tends to incite the rest of them to say, okay, let's defund all the police. We don't need police anymore, and we don't need any incarceration. Well, I tell you what, I work in an incarceration place. We need incarceration.
Yeah.
There's some of these guys, you can't trust them out in the street.
At least not yet.
That's
like,
why they are where they are,
Yeah.
for the most part.
the hope
I
is
mean,
like,
there's
they can
probably
be
some people.
rehabilitated.
There's probably some people who are innocent, who are unrightly imprisoned. That probably does happen. But for the most part, the guys that I see there, they have numerous instances of felony behaviors,
Yeah.
offenses that occurred. They've had lots of chances to amend their ways, and they didn't. And
Yeah.
so they've proven that they can't be trusted out in the street. They've abused their freedom, and so that now they lose their freedom.
Yeah. And
That's what always happens.
Yeah. And hopefully they can be rehabilitated. I mean, I don't think our current prison systems do a great job of like rehabilitating people necessarily. I know that's your job. I mean, like, I hope that like for some people it's successful and all that stuff, or at least
My job is to help those who want to get better get better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
Most of these guys don't want to get better.
yeah,
They all tell me, I love crime. It is really exciting.
yeah,
That being in the action, holding a gun to somebody, you don't know how powerful that can be. You don't know how powerful that can be. That is such a rush. It's at least as intoxicating as the meth.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Like, well, gosh, all right. And it also has consequences like the meth of ruining your civic and emotional heart.
Yeah.
The meth will destroy your actual heart. The
Yeah.
crime will destroy your civic and emotional heart. So, you make choices and there's consequences of that.
Yeah. And
Your
I mean,
will
we're
be
never
done.
gonna,
Your will be done,
yeah.
but be careful.
I don't think any system ever is going to help people who don't want to be helped. But like I guess the hope is that like the people who do want help can be helped and get to a better place so that they can actually be like successful citizens of the country. What was the other thing I was going to say though? I was talking about the John Adams thing. And
Yeah, John Adams. How
oh,
did John Adams? What did he have to do with how the
well,
how the
I mean, he was part of the whole the continental, what was it called, continental
Continental Congress?
Congress, where they were developing the whole system of governance, and he was a big advocate for like, we don't want a pure democracy, we don't want mob rule, because he had these experiences of seeing how the mob ruled. And even think about what we just been through in the church in Easter. Like, think about how the same group of people who were bringing Jesus into the city and welcoming him and saying Hosanna were the same people who were calling to
He
crucify
sucks. We
him.
want Barabbas.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is true. I think.
Kill him and let his blood be on us.
Yeah, yeah, and
Nice mob.
I think when you say like,
Hosanna, blessed is the feet of he who comes in the name of the Lord. Kill him.
and I think like, when like they talk about how like the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing, like I do think the loud minority is especially in like a crowded a mob situation, those are the people who get to dictate. Like he was very, I think he and a lot of the other founding fathers were very aware of that and didn't want that to like be the way our government worked. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Shoshi, what's wrong?
So anyway, the other point that I was hoping to make about this is that if there was a legitimate reason for changing these things, for adding new states, if it seemed like some people in some areas were not getting representation, like they say for DC, then maybe we should add some states. Maybe we should add Puerto Rico. Maybe we should add DC. Apparently, in every Congress since 1965, their statehood bills for DC have been introduced. It only went to the floor once, and there was a vote against it, and that was in 1993. So that it's going to take a lot more to actually get those states in there. This article, this Harvard Law Review, suggests that there perhaps should be an addition of 93 states. Maybe, and maybe what they're talking about is have every metropolitan area over a certain population be represented as its own city-state. Maybe Manhattan would be a state, and Staten Island and the Long Island would be a state, and Brooklyn and the Bronx would be a state, and Harlem would be a state, and Atlanta would be a state, or maybe a couple states. Same thing for, Los Angeles could be like 3 or 4 states. There's such huge populations in some of these areas that they are big enough to be considered states.
Yeah. I get
perhaps the federal government is oversized already.
Yeah,
what this article assumes is that all the power is in the Fed, and so if you really want to have political power, you need to influence the federal government. That might be adding more fuel to a fire that's already been burning out of control. Maybe what needs to happen is power needs to be taken away from the federal government, and there needs to be more states, and there needs to be more power for those states to actually be representative of their population rather than being under the thumb of this Leviathan federal government that has just been, steamrolling everybody else. Yeah, they go through all this different stuff to have
I'm
new
just trying to,
states and
yeah.
should there be new states and
This is quite the article.
um, but their bottom line is that they end up saying at the very end conclusion. Well, in their defense, they did state a few of the things that would be considered counter arguments. They didn't really. They kind of gave me short shrift, I felt, but. Yeah, the best counter argument is simply that this proposal is a fraud, a contrived pie in the sky gimmick to make an end run around the Constitution. That's true. That's what they're trying to do. How could we let a bunch of new low population states control the government? That's precisely what we allow today. The current system of representation allows for a minority population to impose its will on a majority in a way that is deeply undemocratic. That's true. It's not democratic, but it is equitable.
Yeah.
And if there was a adequate majority support for one platform or another, or for one principle or another, it would be different. The problem is what they say in here. It allows a party. Parties are a problem. Parties are the problem.
Yeah.
And they're the reason why the federal government has become so massive.
Yeah.
It's because the parties want to have all the power and they want to consolidate power across the board. They want to eliminate states who are dissenters. You can see that in the media.
Yeah.
Any state that tends to go against what the media feels is the standard nowadays, which is pretty progressive standard in the media, they're tarred and feathered.
I mean, look at Georgia. Like we just talked about Georgia.
In Georgia, in Florida. Oh my goodness, the governor of Florida just gets so much crap from everybody. They got to be careful because they did this with Donald Trump back in 2016. They said he's this philandering, terrible person who did all these shifty things and shady things, and he's not like us. And you know what? There's a lot of people who say, "Oh, he's not like you.
I'm in.
Maybe maybe he's got something to do for me."
Yeah, exactly.
They say that Joe Biden got elected because he was not Donald Trump. It may be that the next Donald Trump gets elected because he's not Joe Biden.
Exactly.
They got to be careful who they champion, because if it's a personality thing that you're going for, the cult of personality where you're voting for some figurehead, that's going to end poorly.
Yeah.
If it's a party thing where you're voting for some platform where it's pre-packaged and everything has to come together, and its infrastructure contains 5% infrastructure. That's like buying those juice pouches that have 5% juice. It's syrup.
It's sugar.
It's not juice. That's syrup. And they're trying to sell us syrup in this infrastructure picture. It's not infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's a payday for the people that they support. It's crony capitalism at its worst. It's getting in bed with the labor unions and the electric car users and manufacturers. And there's nothing wrong with electric cars. That's great. If it's a good technology, it will certainly flourish based on its ability to impress people and show its value in a market.
Yeah, compete in the market.
Not because the government boosts it up.
Yeah.
Everything that the government boosts up tends to turn to crap.
Yeah.
They're King Midas in reverse. You
Yeah.
know, you look at something like, no offense, but the U.S. Postal Service. That's been a bureaucratic boondoggle for years.
Yeah.
It's been a money loser. The only way they've been able to make any money more recently is by having contracts with Amazon and different
Yeah.
e-commerce places to
Yeah.
deliver things. They basically become delivery
Yeah.
because information doesn't travel by mail anymore.
Yeah.
Information travels by computer,
Yeah. Yeah.
by digital technology.
And basically, yeah, your cell phone. I get all of my, like, I just had some blood work done, and it's like, I don't even know if they're gonna send me anything in the mail, but as soon as they get the information, they just send me an email, and I look at it on my phone, and I can know exactly what the information is. It's so much faster and more reliable than the actual mail system. I was gonna say about,
Speaking of, your sister, she's got a name that's very similar to mine.
yeah.
She got a bill. Somehow the U.S. Postal Service forwarded my bill for my local waste pickup to her in Arizona. They forwarded it to her.
That's funny.
Because she was here for a while, and so
Yeah.
she put in a forwarding address, and her name is close enough to mine that I guess it's like, oh, she moved to Arizona. We're sending that to Arizona. They didn't bother to look,
Yeah.
William. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is funny. It's funny too because, like,
If you don't get your email address correct, it's not getting there.
Yeah. Most of our mail that we get here is either spam, like stuff that we don't want, advertisements, or it's like literally stuff from the 2 previous people who lived here. Even though we've lived here for multiple years now, we still get mail from this guy, Matt Bonfiglio. Hey, Matt Bonfiglio, if you're out there, change your mailing address, because I get all of your magazines and all of your, like, Geico ads and all this stuff addressed to him, and I'm like, like 90% of it just goes straight in the recycling. I don't know. I don't know. I had things to say.
Anyway, so let me just make one point. If the basis for making these changes was to allow more political power to be in the hands of individuals, that would be great. That's not what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're talking about trying to consolidate power again within these parties.
Yeah.
It's the party that's now in place is wanting to expand the Supreme Court to 13. How come? Because right now there's 7 of the 11, or 7 of the 9. How many? There's
9.
11.
There's 9.
Yeah. 7 of the 9 are Republican appointees. They want to be able to have, or 6 of the 9 are Republican appointees. Yeah. They want to have the ability to have 7 Democratic appointees.
Yeah.
Well, where does that end?
Yeah.
I mean, does everybody at birth, does everybody get admitted to the Supreme Court? I mean, we're going to have 350 million Supreme Court justices?
Yeah.
That might work. It'll certainly slow them down.
Yeah, that's true.
It'll certainly slow them down. I think the same thing for senators. At birth, everybody should become a senator, and they have to have a quorum in order to get anything done. That would the only laws that would get passed are laws that everybody says there ought to be a law. We need a law now. Let's all get together and do this. If otherwise, all this other stuff would just fade away.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea. I think if you're going to expand the number of states, you ought to expand it to maybe every county in the whole.
Every household. Every household is a state.
That would work. Every household is a state, or
Well,
make some of these states into their own countries. If they really don't want, they said that 40% of the population in 2030 or 2040, 40% of the population is going to live in 5 states. It's going to be concentrated in those 5 states. If those 5 states want to break off from the union and become their own thing, either individually or collectively, let them.
yeah,
As far as I'm concerned, the Constitution is a good thing. The problem with the Constitution is everybody wants to subvert it. Nobody wants to follow it. They want to find the loopholes. It's like W.C. Fields looking through the Bible. Oh, what are you reading the Bible for? I'm looking for the loopholes. I'm looking for the ways to subvert the commandments so
yeah,
that I can get away with stuff. That's what the Democrats are doing now. That's what the Republicans do when they're in power. They're both a bunch of, neither of them are any more virtuous. They're all power mongers. The only ones that seem to have any virtue are the ones who are actually focused on principle rather than on power. The ones who are focused on the power, that power is corrupting. The ones who say on principle, we want the power to go to the people. Those are the platforms that seem to be the most virtuous and the most the ones that I can at least support more wholeheartedly, because it's principle over party. It's got to be, and the power going to the people, the power going, a nation conceived in liberty ought to be focused on maximizing the liberty for the people.
well, this is what I bring
And
up.
that doesn't have anything to do with equity. I mean, if I don't want to make any money, I don't have to make any money. If I want to make money, as long as I'm doing it in a way that is not aggressive, not taking advantage of other people's property or or enslaving other people, then fine, have at it. If you want to make money, if money is your thing, go for it. If you don't want to make money, don't make money. And if it's all this interference in the market, all this interference in the process that causes the government so many problems.
Yeah.
To me, it causes a problem for me with the government.
Yeah.
It's
the
politics.
problem
It's
with
politics as usual. I guess it's not a problem for them. It's just that's where they live. They live in the swamp, and they're used to that.
Yeah.
And that's where all the ogres live, and they like it there.
Yeah. And I do think I probably would agree with like a lot of the points made in the article, as far as like I do not like the fact that it's like every 4 years, and not just every 4 years, because the election cycle starts way before 4 years, but it's like,
it's already started.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's like,
I just told you that the next not Joe Biden runs is going to be the next president.
Yeah,
because everybody has a chance to screw up their base.
Yeah.
And to alienate the opposition enough to where the opposition becomes galvanized enough to stand up against them, and the base is satisfied enough that they just sit home and watch.
Yeah.
It's fear and anger that keeps driving the process rather than love and principle.
Well, and if we had a system where who the president is doesn't matter very much, because the only thing that they are actually doing is maybe directing the military, which is like kind of supposed to be their job. If that was their only job, was like directing the military, and ideally directing it in a way that was like, hey, let's defend ourselves and not get entangled with a bunch of other countries and their business and whatever, like, then who would care who the president is? Like,
Exactly.
wouldn't get up in
You
arms.
don't care who the sous chef is. You care who the head chef is.
Yeah.
And if the government is just the sous chef, if they're just preparing the
Federal
base,
government. The federal
yeah,
government.
the federal government, if they're just preparing the base and everything else is kind of more locally directed,
Yeah.
it's probably going to be more to my taste. I might not like clam chowder. I might not like crab cakes. I might not like donuts. I do. But to each their own. Everybody should have a choice. And instead, the federal government pretty much, they're putting out the menu.
Yeah.
They're deciding what everybody is going to have to eat, when they're going to eat it, and how they're going to eat it.
It's the whole principle of subsidiarity in the Catholic Church, right? Like,
exactly.
we want things to be resolved at the most local level, at the level where there's going to be the most control for each individual person, right? So like, if we truly care about giving individuals more power, which is kind of the stated purpose of like giving
equal representation.
Yes, exactly. If we actually care about that, what we would do is we would slash the size of the federal government, make it so that we don't care if what the electoral college system is. We don't care about all these presidential races every 4 years or whatever. And we focused much more, not even just on the state, but like you said, in your county or your local government, like if they were the people who were dictating how your
neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Like at the most, I mean, I think the most energy should be focused on your family, right? Like I said, your household. That's where I focus the most of my energy, because that is the area where I have the most control. I can't control what happens between the cops and citizens in a state 3 states over from me. I can't even really control what happens in that interaction in my own state.
Down in your parking lot.
Exactly. I can control what happens with the decisions of my husband and myself or my family.
You can try to intervene in the conflicts that occur between your children.
Yeah, which there are numerous. It's a job enough for my entire life. Like that to me is where first of all, it's better because I have more control over the situation. It's also better because I care about those people. I love them, and I'm willing to make sacrifices, and I'm willing to make.
And you know them. You know what they need. You know their personalities.
Exactly.
You know what appeals to them. You know what motivates them. You know what drives them. You know what they desire. Joe Biden doesn't know me.
Exactly.
Joe, come on, give me a call. I got some ideas, man.
Even my senators.
Here's the deal, bro.
My senators, my House of Representative member, the mayor, none of these people even know me. I mean, if we had it, like, ideally it would be nice. I actually think, like, when they talk about making each of these metropolitan areas their own state, I think it would actually be better if you just cut those up into cities, smaller cities. So instead of New York City, you had tons of little cities in New York where you could actually go to your city council and make a difference. Because right now, if you are a member of New York City and you go to the New York City city council, your mayor doesn't know you. You don't care. It's like, if everything was proportional based on population of making a city, that's when you would have true power over, like, okay, what do we want to spend our tax money on? If you're going to have taxes, maybe we're not going to have city taxes at all. Maybe everybody's going to be responsible for their own selves in certain cities, and you can have more control. Like, that would be the ideal world for me. Like, if we're
maybe we need more Pluribus and less Unum.
Yeah, I mean,
the problem is that would tend to diffuse. I mean, that certainly would diffuse federal government. It would also create I mean, you've got two kids who fight with each other. Imagine 93 states, how they would,
But like,
what the conflicts there would be, and that's why there needs to be a certain baseline of federal. I mean, the Constitution is a pretty good basis
yeah,
for deciding how things go. I think if people don't like the Constitution, they ought to secede from the Union,
yeah,
because the Constitution is supposedly the document that directs how our government is going to proceed within these United States. If you don't want to be part of these United States, disunify,
yeah,
secede, and take over the way that you want to do it. If you want to have things different, but you can't throw out the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. You can't throw all that stuff out and say, well, that stuff was great back then, but now it doesn't work. I'm taking over,
yeah,
I'm in charge now.
yeah.
And you don't have my vote.
I
You
guess,
might have a lot of votes.
yeah,
You might get a lot of people in those 5 states to say, hey, we're gonna run things from now on. But the other 45 states are gonna have something that they're gonna want to say about that, regardless of whether they have the biggest population or not.
yeah. I guess my issue, like, you said with 93 states, there's going to be a lot of like fighting or whatever. But I guess the thing is, like, who cares if there's a lot of fighting if the only purpose of the federal government is really to just protect all the citizens within, protect the rights of each person, like make sure that there's not one state that's saying we are going to enslave the members of another state, or even we're going to enslave all the minority people in our own state or whatever. I mean, like, obviously those things are wrong, and they're aggressing against people. So we have to make sure that, like, there are things that are off limits for what you want to decide for your state, right? Like, we can't just say, like, okay, we're making this state and slavery's back. We're having, like, or whatever it is, like, or we're going to have this state and murder is legal in our state. Like, there are certain things that
we're going to build big walls around our states with barbed wire to keep people in, or to
yeah.
keep people out. I don't keep people in.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess to me it's like the fighting between states doesn't. The nice thing about that too is, like, it's really hard right now to be like, okay, I don't like it's not that hard, but it is more difficult to say, I don't like the policies of my state, so I'm going to try to move to a state that's more in line with my principles. Like, there are people who do that. We are doing that, right? Like, my husband and I are doing that right now because we don't like the state that we live in because of the way it's run. So we are looking to do that. Now, it does make it more difficult when that means moving several hours. Like, it's harder when there's only 50 of them to do that. If instead it was like, I'm going to move like 5 blocks over because that's a different, like, centralized, you don't even have to call it a state, but just like the head of their city or whatever is more in line with my principles, it just makes it a lot more fluid. I think it would be easier for people to move, and there would be more of like a marketplace of ideas in that sense of being like, there's going to be some city centers, whatever, where it's going to go to hell really quick. Like, think about places like San Francisco where
Some of them are already well on their way.
Exactly. There's places in California where they don't enforce homelessness laws. So guess what? Like, there's people who are shooting up in the street. It makes it unsafe. There's human waste all over the place. Like,
people are camped out on the sidewalks. And
yeah, but, like, guess what?
If that's how you want, that's your kinder, gentler area, have at it. I mean, you go for it. If you don't want to have any police, if you don't want to have any laws, don't have any laws, don't have any police. See how that works for you.
Exactly.
It's going to be an interesting experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically saying, okay, we're going to move to a a pre-civilized organization,
Yeah.
or a post-civilized organization, or something. But there's not going to be any police. We're going to have basically anarchy.
Yeah.
We're going to have suggestions, but we're not going to have any laws that are going to be enforced.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
And it would be nice too, because we've talked before about it would be nice to have like a Catholic state. Like, think about, there would be some cities where it's like most of the citizens here are going to be Catholic, so we're going to have laws according to our shared principles. Like, I don't necessarily think there should be like, okay, you like, you can't like I don't think necessarily the commandment should be the law, but you could at least have a like-minded community around you and be able to trust your neighbors that they're also having the same principles as you. Like, that's what a lot of the whole free state project with New Hampshire and all that stuff of like, or is it Vermont, New Hampshire? I don't know, wherever it is, where they're saying like a lot of libertarians are trying to move to the same state to make like a libertarian state. Like, that's not a bad idea. It would be nicer if they were smaller.
Come south, guys.
It would be nicer weather, yeah. I like that idea more. I mean, I think because the parties have so much power right now, they're like, I don't see that really happening right now. I don't really see that as being like an option on the table, but it's certainly nice to dream about. And I mean, I think that at the end of the day, like, that is what I'm doing with my family. Like, that is what I'm doing when I'm setting up the rules and the system and how I'm going to run my family, because, and I find other like-minded families and we make communities together. Like, my church community is made up of tons of like-minded families, of like people who care about Catholic principles, people who homeschool, people who are, you know, whatever it is. Like, we get together and we have
feel a fellowship.
Yeah. And it would be nice if we could also have our, like, you know, make the governmental decisions for ourselves as well. But I mean, it would just be, or at least it would be nice if the government had way less control over our lives and over our taxes and all that stuff, so that we didn't care who was in charge of our government. So I don't know. I was going to say something else and I forgot, but that's okay.
Okay.
Well, do we have any other points we want to make?
No, I guess the bottom line of my concern is that this is these whole packing the Supreme Court, packing the states, packing the union, packing different things is all intended to subvert the Constitution rather than support it, and it's all going to be more instances of infringements on liberty rather than establishing and supporting liberty.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting. I live in
that's my concern, and most of the people, I mean, God bless them, they actually say it's a proposal to admit new states for the purpose of amending the Constitution. They want to change the Constitution. They want to create a different country.
Yeah.
Okay, create a different country, and
don't change this one.
You
make
know,
your own country.
Make your own country. Yeah. Well, maybe we need to move to a post-America. You know, something where America becomes something less unum and something more pluribus, because there's a lot of plurality here. There's a lot of people who have a lot of different ideas that certainly are not getting represented.
Well, I mean, think about something like Europe. Europe is kind of similar to us in that they have individual countries, but they also have, you know, the European Union. I don't really know much about like the European Union and how much like control they have over things, but I know that Britain was like, we don't want to be part of it anymore. We're going to pull back. We're going to do our own thing. It's like, that would almost be better if each state just became its own country. And then they were like, we'll still have some sort of American Union, sort of deal where I don't know.
We'll have a treaty, and
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll all have, we'll have, maybe we'll have bases for for trade and stuff
yeah,
like that. But it the problem will be right now. There is not a big deal about borders crossing from Virginia to Maryland
yeah.
is almost invisible.
You can't even tell really unless
At
your
some point in
GPS
the
says.
future, if Virginia and Maryland have huge conflicts where, like, Maryland says nobody can have anything that contains tobacco, and
Yeah,
Virginia says we love tobacco, uh, there may be a border where there's going to be checks, you know.
well, I mean, even when I went to Europe, so I went to Europe when I was 16 or something. We went from I was mainly in Italy, but we did cross over into Switzerland for the day. And they said, like, everybody have your passports out because they might stop us and check. But it was like, it was once again a thing where it's like, I don't remember it. Now, this was, I don't know,
It
10
wasn't a highly defended border.
Exactly, and it might be different now. This was 10 years ago. It might have been a weird case because this is just one anecdote. But still, like, I don't even think they stopped us crossing the border because these European states are fairly fluid. I think it's not like you. I think if there were,
It's not a huge culture shock going
yeah,
from one to another.
exactly. So I don't.
It's not like the Berlin Wall where there's
Yeah,
razor wire up top
yeah,
and people with machine guns standing on both sides at checkpoint Charlie saying, "Hey, whoa, what are you doing here?"
yeah,
Like looking at other people as though they're the enemy.
yeah.
But right now, there's a lot of places in America that are looking at each other as being the enemy. And the only reason we're the enemy is because we're all fighting over the same power. If we divide up that power, we won't be enemies anymore. We'll figure out ways that we can be friends.
Yeah.
Why can't we all just get along?
Well, yeah, I think that's probably a good place to end it. I don't know. Hopefully,
Probably. Why can't we all just get along? Do you know what that's from?
No.
Rodney King.
Oh, okay.
The Rodney King. That was before you were born now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That was a different generation of riots. Back then, we didn't mind people getting beat up.
Yeah.
That was the start. That was another evolution in the consciousness and awareness of how people were being oppressed by
the man.
governments and government enforcers.
Yeah. Before I was going to say, when we were talking about how there, if we did make every kind of like city its own country or whatever, it kind of reminds me of, did you guys watch The Walking Dead, right? Or at least most of it?
Yeah, we've watched a couple seasons of it.
Kind
Yeah.
of reminds me of like The Walking Dead in the sense that, like, these people band together and form communities where they kind of have their own rules, where it's like, they have the whole, like, Rick is the head of his little community and they have some rules, but then there's like Negan and his group, which are like terrible, and they have their own rules.
And even within Rick's group, there
Yeah.
was that other fella who wanted to vie with him for.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wherever you get like more than 4 people together, there's going to be like conflicts for power. I mean,
in any couple, there's gonna be disagreements.
Yeah, I mean, between my 2 children, there's conflicts for power.
Between you and your husband.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So, I don't know. Hopefully we can figure out some better balance of power in our country before we get to a zombie apocalypse.
I don't think we're going to figure it out, and I don't think us talking about it is going to make much of a change, but I do feel good talking about it and trying to sort it out and trying to just get it straight in my head and saying, what a wonderful world it would be.
Yeah. And at least for like all of you watching, it maybe brought up questions or made you think about things in a different way, or at least made you realize maybe I do need to turn the news off and focus more on what's happening in my house, because that is where I have the control. Like at the very least, if that's all you take from this, then that's a good thing, because the more that we focus on our sphere of control and
The more
less,
serenity we have, and the
yes.
less likely we're going to have a panic attack in the middle of the night.
Yes, I was telling my dad that I was having just like anxious, worried thoughts. And it's not anxious, worried thoughts about the larger world. It's still about like things that are happening in my family. But within my family, there are lots of things that I can't control, like the future, like worrying about things that are just outside my control. There are lots of things that are outside of my control. And guess what? I have to just submit and say, I can't control it. Do it.
God is, as Father Hesborough said, God is God and I'm not.
Yeah. There are lots of things that I just need to say,
Let it
you know what?
be. Let it be.
I'll either worry about this at the time when it comes, because there are things that are happening in the future that I can't control,
Or it'll take care of itself.
yeah. So hopefully that's at least the message you take away from this. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Have the
joining us.
serenity to accept the things that you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope that yeah, you have some wisdom and serenity.
So you got some editing to do here, I think.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya. God bless.